It's been a very long time since something unsettled me as much as Darkwood has, and just as long since a horror game stuck with me, so long after the end credits had rolled. I'm a huge fan of horror games, and I'm always on the lookout for something intriguing, something different from the typical jump scare festival the market is so inundated with right now. So when I got a notification to let me know that Darkwood had left early access, it was an immediate purchase for me. For the sake of parity, the final release of the game was my first experience with Darkwood. I don't tend to pay for early access games, but I kept my eye on this one, checking in every once in a while for an update. So when it was released, somewhat out of the blue, for a reasonable cost of 10 whole English pounds, I didn't even pause to think about it. Thankfully, it turned out to be a good idea. And I'm going to try not to repeat myself after my first impressions video, but thoughts and criticisms will inevitably cross over, so if you want a less scripted, more immediate and reactionary review of the game, check out my initial video. For those interested in a more concise opinion, let's begin. Please be aware that this video is inevitably going to contain mild spoilers, particularly for the opening few hours of the story. If you're at all interested in Darkwood, I would strongly recommend leaving this video and checking out the game first. Darkwood is a top-down survival horror game with a heavy emphasis on resource management and decision-making. You play an unnamed protagonist who has come to be lost in the woods that seem to be endlessly growing. The faster they're cut down, the faster they return. Myths are abound that there is a way out of these woods, but nobody's found it yet. So when you stumble your way into the hands of a desperate and rather angry man, with a key in your pocket that seems to lead to the only real chance of escape, you are suddenly and violently thrust into a dismal world where the darkness creeps and crawls with horrors. It's difficult to describe what makes Darkwood such a different and joyous experience without spoiling the aspects of it that make it so. The game is dripping with a carefully crafted atmosphere so succinctly put together that it's extraordinary. I've said before that the game is evocative of the Silent Hill style of atmosphere, but that isn't entirely correct. Silent Hill is a feeling of loss, of loneliness, of emptiness. It's a feeling that something isn't quite right, that there's a hole in the world, but you're unable to figure out quite what's missing. Darkwood isn't like that exactly. Darkwood is instead an emotion, crushing, bewildering, heartbreak and despair. There aren't many games that so sublimely exemplify the dread of despair and tragedy, but I'll put forth that Darkwood is one of them. In part, this is a game about recovering your lost key and finding your way out of the forest. But in the entirety of the game, I never felt like escape was the purpose. Survival for one thing, sure, but something else as well. An almost intangible something. And as I ventured deeper and deeper into the woods, growing braver and braver with each passing in-game day, I came to realise what it was. That insatiable appetite to explore, to uncover, and to own. Darkwood is a game that at its core is about the total encapsulation of that all-too-human yearning to see more, to overcome the darkness and seek the light. In this case, the light may be the exit to the forest, but it doesn't feel like the game is pushing you towards that light, that exit. It's more that the game wants you to explore it, wants you to uncover mysteries, to face your fears. It wants you to gently shoulder through that doorway, it wants you to walk into that horrific stormy lake. It wants you to find out what is snarling and pounding at your door. It's a shame that there are small chips in its glossy paintwork that can at times make exploring feel like a chore. The game is reasonably well paced in terms of its day-night cycle, the time you have to inch further and further from your hideout without ever being out of reach of a safe haven, and the progression of its main and side quests, although ultimately how quickly you do those quests is entirely down to you. It is absolutely possible to be informed of something in a very abstract manner by an NPC and not even realise that this is a side quest until you accidentally doom someone or something to a miserable fate hours down the line. The game's quests, main and side alike, have branching narratives, with most having at least two possible routes. The game never corrals you along a linear path. It gives you the freedom to decide when and how to deal with your quests. It gives you the freedom to manage your time and doesn't chastise you for doing something that might be considered morally repugnant. The game doesn't want you to be good or evil, it just wants you to survive. But flaws do exist, and the game's biggest flaw is its combat. The combat system just is not very good. There's no easy nor better way to say it. The combat system is bad. The way it works is simple. You have a shovel, a pick, or a walking stick. You hold the right mouse button until the little reticule on the screen lights up red, and then you left click. The weapon won't swing if the reticule isn't red. You can also press the middle mouse button to swing, though this is a far weaker attack, and to be frank, it isn't worth the hassle. The combat sounds simple enough. The problem is that every single enemy's attack, basic, charge or otherwise, can knock you out of your wind-up animation. So if you're just about to unleash a charged attack on an enemy, you click the left mouse button but they hit you first, your attack will fail automatically. Add to that the fact that enemies deal a lot of damage and take very little, especially in the Silent Wood section where the second stage dog enemies start roaming in ones and twos. There's a dodge mechanic, which I mentioned in my first impressions, but it's largely useless as it only takes you back in a straight line, and if an enemy is charging at you, that dodge isn't going to make any difference at all. The upside is that you can flee and use the terrain to your advantage, but if you're in an open area and a roaming monstrosity starts trying to chew your face off, you are generally better off letting it kill you if you're playing on normal difficulty. On the harder settings, the limited lives make navigating the combat an even bigger pain, so if you're wanting to test out the permadeath mode, I would strongly suggest erring on the side of extreme caution. You do not want to be fighting enemies in this mode if you want to survive. Thankfully, this is the only real issue I have with the game. Everything else is pretty much on point. It's clear that Darkwood is a labour of love, and to be perfectly honest, it baffles me how 3 first-time developers and their dog managed to create such a genuine, thought-provoking, evocative experience, when so many AAA developers struggle to portray a decent story. Let me give an example, as spoiler-free as possible. Early on in the game, around the 3 to 4 hour mark, I helped an NPC out on his quest. I sourced a few old mechanical parts for him, and once I'd handed them over, he thanked me and went on his way. Over the course of the next few hours, I'd all but forgotten about him and his questline. Upon entering Chapter 2, I was busily exploring a house and happened across another NPC who told me something strange and terrifying had happened in a nearby junkyard. That was odd, I thought. I'd been to that junkyard and couldn't remember seeing anything weird. So I went back and explored again. And it hit me then, suddenly and horrifyingly. The thing she was talking about had been there the first time I visited, but I'd glossed over it at the time. And as I stood there before the catastrophic mess spread before me, I realised this was my doing. This was my fault. The game is full of brilliant little flourishes like this. By and large, the NPC side quests have little bearing on the overall plot, but they tend to reward you with more areas to explore, easy access to upper tier equipment, and a richer, more engrossing world to delve into. The game has been superbly crafted, and it oozes expertise from its every pore. The glorious aesthetic is not even slightly hampered by the top-down view. The game's survival and resource manage elements are easy to grasp and even easier to master. All that the game asks from you is that you be patient, be smart, and stay focused. I wasn't expecting a lot when I picked up Darkwood, but I'm glad I did. The game was delayed by a year and it's all the better for it. The team at Acid Wizard Studios have created a brilliantly thrilling, engrossing and atmospheric game that puts a great many other jumpscare fests and Slender clones to shame. I'm glad I picked it up, more so that I poured 24 hours into it. If you want to experience the thrill of that all-too-human yearning for more, to explore, to discover, give Darkwood a shot. Look past the flawed combat and stare into the abyss. It won't be long before it starts to stare back.